Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here in the United States of America on the East Coast. It is about 7:01 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for joining us tonight here on the Campaign for America Patriot Desk. Well, folks, I'm going to share something exciting for the Canadian citizens in just a few moments, but we do now have a representative, a Campaign for America representative, a presence, if you will, in Canada, and he'll be joining me shortly. Well, we understand that there are a number of lawsuits that are now being filed against the Trudeau government and other government agencies with regard to the actions that they are taking against Canadian citizens. We'll be speaking about that a bit later. If you're a Canadian citizen and didn't think that you have had any impact on people around the world, I can tell you, you have. We have learned, and we're getting more information, hopefully this week, that there are college students across America who belong to the Republican Party. They're now speaking up on behalf of Canadian lovers of freedom. And I've got to tell you, when the college students get involved in issues like this, they're very passionate, and we're going to find out more. And we hope to have that. We hope to have some of these students on the air as we move forward. They've made it pretty clear. I did see one of their posting on social media. They've made it pretty clear that they're upset that Justin Trudeau is creating partnerships with not only individuals like Joe Biden here in America, but also with the Chinese Communist Party. You see, the Trudeau government, his supporters and those who support him in the parliament, they don't get it. They just don't get it. They don't realize that they have created a firestorm, not only across Canada, but also across America and around the globe. And in a way, folks, that might be a good thing, because it is a wake-up call for all of us in the United States of America, in Canada, and around the world to keep an eye on those people who are elected to office, keep their feet to the fire, and begin to exercise our rights before they take those rights away. So I kind of like to look at the glass of water half full in a lot of cases. And I can tell you, thanks to the Canadian people, the dignity, the honor, the way they have handled the crisis that they're facing has had positive impact worldwide. In addition to that, folks, I could tell you that to give you an example on what grassroots protesting and grassroots within the framework of the law actions can do. We all know about Kenosha, Wisconsin here in the United States. That was the scene of many protest shootings. Black Lives Matter nearly burned the city down and tore the entire city apart. As in all American cities that are facing these violent protesters, far cry from the peaceful protesters in Canada, these were all controlled by the Democrat Communist Party here in America. The good news is that about 48 hours ago, maybe 72 hours ago, there was an election in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and the Democrats were defeated. The Republicans will now be taken over. The communists are being sent their walking papers, and we're going to see the restoration of freedom and liberty back in that city. And that is the first bit of the red tsunami, meaning red in Republican tsunami, will be sweeping across the United States of America. So if you think your voice isn't having impact, it is. Politicians of all stripes are watching what's going on. I can tell you in Canada, here in America, we're getting information, pretty credible information. And David Doolin will be on the air in a minute. We're going to be talking about the necessity of being transparent and being truthful. But we're getting pretty credible information that there are members of your parliament very concerned, not about you, of course, not about me, but they're concerned about their political careers. And they'll do anything, folks, to save their own hides at the end of the day, which means somebody's got to be thrown off the ship, right? Somebody's got to be thrown off the sinking ship of the Canadian government. See how fast as you move forward and progress and do what you must do, again, within the framework of the law, within your courts, within the Constitution. See what they do and see who they throw overboard. All right, folks, I am pleased to announce tonight that David Doolin, a great Canadian patriot and a Canadian citizen, he is now going to be the Campaign for America representative in your country. He is the Canadian Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy for our organization. He'll be working very closely with us to bring us facts, to bring us actionable and credible information that we're not only going to be able to share with the Canadian citizens, but also with people around the world, and especially here in America. David, I'm going to welcome you aboard. Let's get you on the air here, David. David, welcome, and thanks for joining us,
Thank
and
you.
thanks for being part of the team here.
My pleasure. Thanks
It's
very much.
pretty exciting
It
for your
is.
countrymen and women to hear that now they do have a strong presence in Canada in you. And I want to thank you for coming up and joining us and doing what you do for the Canadian residents. Now let's talk about something that you and I talked about before we went on the air. And you mentioned a scripture to me, and it was about being truthful and transparent, making sure that the information we get out is indeed truthful and transparent, because we're getting a lot of information here that's false, not checked out, a lot of emotion. We get it, but we need someone like you. And I thank God we have someone like you to fact check everything, including us.
Yes,
So let's
sure.
talk about how the government and others are putting out information to distract us, and how we're working hard to put out information that's factual.
Well, I think it's the distraction, the things that they do put out. Like we were talking a bit about a story that you were talking about what's going on down there, but they're working on something right now. I think we could talk about Bill C-11, for example. That's the
Dave,
one that
if you can, if you could do me 1 minute, I'm getting some feedback that people can't hear you. Could you just speak up a little?
Sure. Is this any better?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's good. So going back to what we talked about last time, C-11 is the bill that we're talking about as far as the censorship of the streaming. It's also called the Online Streaming Act, is the short name of it. They've been discussing it in the House, and it's at the second reading at this point right now. So it's moving along, and that's going to see where the CRTC actually, which is the Canadian Radio and Television, is the arm that monitors or regulates the industry for like radio and television. They're thinking of, well, they're trying to open up that act, and this bill would amend it so that everything that goes, whether we are loading something online or receiving something, they would be censoring it essentially. So they're trying to make it sound like this is something that, well, we really need, and it's going to help Canadians. And so the distraction is that, oh, it's for the betterment of the Canadians, not talking about the restrictions and what they're actually doing. So
Well, let's follow up on that a minute, because I have a little feed here with the Americans questioning that. By the way, as I said to you before, and I'd like the Canadians to know that Americans are watching now, and they thought that in the beginning of all this that we were in the twilight zone. Those are the words I used. That this couldn't be true. That none of this could be going on so close to us. Well, now they realize it is true. Now let's talk about this idea of censoring. That's appalling to an American because of our Constitution, and it can't happen. They've tried it here. Indeed, our media does have, I'm sure they are influenced by a lot of politicians. But what you're saying, David, is really something that the Communist Party has done throughout its history. So you're telling me, if I'm correct, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that there seems to be an effort to control, because this is what it sounds like.
Yes.
What not only is going through the regular media outlets, your news outlets, but also through your computer, your phone.
That's correct. That's correct.
Media? Is that a fact?
Yes, that's a fact. That's what it's intended to do. And so there's a couple of things also that there's also the one that we talked about as far as the it's not the hate speech, but the hate signage and things like that. And then there's now, just recently, it just came up on my Twitter feed about Bill 1 in Alberta. So they've passed it where it's talking about having a $200,000 fine, arrest without warrant, if you're protesting on the street, sidewalk, private land, public land, anywhere on the street, bridges. I mean, that's atrocious. So imagine arrest without warrant, $200,000 fine, and 6 months in jail for a protest.
Someone on this feed here from Canada said that it is in your Constitution, I guess your Charter of Rights, that they should, I'm assuming that they can't have any control. They're not allowed to censor.
That's correct. That's correct. All of these measures, all of them, are against our, we have, our freedoms are protected in the Charter, which is part of our Constitution. And we definitely have the freedom of thought. We have the freedom of being able to move around, the freedom of security of person. I mean, we have the right for peaceful protest. I mean, we had the right to peaceful protest in Ottawa. I mean, we were completely peaceful. And one of the things that we talked about is everything is provided as peaceful. We're on the right side of the law. When you're standing on the legislation and we're being peaceable about it, we're absolutely following the law. When they bring out force and they start smashing windows on trucks and arresting people, they're the ones that are the goons. They're the ones that are breaking the law. So I mean, it'll get sorted out in courts eventually. But right now, there seems to be a huge effort to to restrict our ideas, our speech, our online streaming, our protests. I mean, what else? What are we going to have left?
Well, here's something astonishing again to the American audience, and astonishing to me, frankly. All this is going on, and there have been efforts in America, by some politicians to do this, and they have been pounded on, not just by the American people, but by people even their own party. So my question is, and I know a lot of Americans are asking this question: how did they get this to this point? I mean, are there any political office holders in Canada, in your parliament, who are standing up and speaking out? Now, I do understand, and I might be wrong, but someone sent me information last week that one of the members of parliament were arrested.
Yes, well, a member of provincial parliament. So that's the Ontario. They're like an MLA in Ontario. So he's an MPP, Randy Hillier. I think there was something like 8 charges or 9 charges. One of them being assault on a police officer, or not. They didn't call it a police officer, but it was security or police person. And it was, and they showed a video of it. Like, it doesn't make any sense, because since when would you have something like more than 30 days after? Wouldn't a police officer know that he was assaulted at the time and make the arrest then and there? I mean, it just seems like the man's a one that spoke up against COVID. He was the one that exposed the whole COVID camps that they have in Canada that the government funded. They took out they had an RP, what do they call it, a request for proposal to build secure barbed wire COVID camps across Canada. He exposed that. He asked what it's for, and they wouldn't answer it. So he's been a thorn in the Ford government, and he's been a real champion for freedoms and liberties, and I think that's why he was a target.
I've talked to our national political director here, Campaign for America's national political director and policy director, Arnold Sherman. He's in Florida, very well connected with law enforcement, worked for criminal justice administration for quite some time. I've talked to him about the possibility of really banning Trudeau from coming to this country. Because look, I'm a dreamer. My fifth grade teacher says I'm a dreamer, but you got to dream sometimes, and you got to think out of the box. I don't want this guy to step foot in the United States. To me, he is an enemy of freedom and liberty, and that makes him an enemy of my country. And Americans, I know, feel that way. We feel that way to a great degree about Joe Biden, our own president, who has cozied up to the Communist Party. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I'm glad of, and I thank God for you and the Canadian citizens, and the fact that we're on the air, God knows for how long. But you know what you and I are doing, and others like the fellow show I was on, what do they call that? The Shadow.
Shadow Davis, yes.
Yeah, great guy. Yes. Great broadcast. I hope to have him on one day.
Yes.
What we're doing is what the Communist Party hates, what the Trudeau regime hates. You talked about, we're getting truth out and we're getting transparency out. They've been trying to hide this for a long time. They can't hide it. So I'm thinking of this, the Canadians, some of them are here saying, and Americans saying, well, what do you do if the internet shut down? We can't get to the Canadian people. Well, I don't have it here, folks, but I'll tell you what I did. We kind of think out of the box here. Maybe the next broadcast, I'll show you something. It was a box about this big, shortwave radio, Radio Free Europe. Remember that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do.
Yeah. So we could get to you, they can't block that.
Yeah.
They can't block that. So there's always a way, folks. That's why I say never give up hope. But getting back to this idea of Trudeau being prohibited from crossing the border into this country, I'll tell you what, the mood of this country in America, there's a lot of anger at politicians like him. And the more the word is getting out, the more factual, David, information from people like you, who will now be representing our organization up there, the more first-person testimonies that come on the air, the grandmas, the grandpas, the aunts and uncles. I understand even cops have lost their jobs for speaking out.
Yes.
So I could talk about this till the end of the earth, but when we hear from people like you and others, it's just astonishing. to
It
hear
is.
this from people in a free country. So,
And,
so
and
let's talk about something that we kind of made a little error. We're interested in truth, right?
sure.
On our newsletter. Would you please just clarify the pension issue?
Yeah, so I researched that business about the pension, and at first glance, it sounds like, well, from what I read in the newsletter, it sounded like people that were receiving old age pension, we call it OAS or your CPP, that they wouldn't get their pension. That's what it was on Facebook. It circulated that they wouldn't get their pension if they didn't take the jab. That's not what that legislation is. There is a piece of legislation out about that, but it's got nothing to do with that per se. It is about that you wouldn't get CERB payments or unemployment insurance in excess of whatever your pension is. So that's what that bill is for. So I read through that one. So I looked at this session 44, and I looked at the previous session at 43. There's nothing on that, but there is, however, something about federal people that are losing their position because they're refusing to either disclose or to receive the jab. Okay, and so they're at that place where they're pensionable. This is a policy, not a legislation. This is a policy that they wouldn't receive their pension unless they resign from their position. So these are people leave without pay. So it's partially true, but it's not all pensions. I just wanted to clarify that.
It seems like they really want to hurt the people any way they can. Now, I've got a question for you because these are things that we wonder here in this country if you can do the things we do. We found a strategy that worked, and I mentioned this, I think, on one of our last broadcasts. We used to tell people, write your letters and make your calls to the president, to the White House. Call them by the thousands and let them know how you feel. It didn't seem to do anything. And I'm thinking, well, why are we going after the head? Why don't we go after the tail? Why don't we go after the ones at the bottom of the ring who are
Hmm.
desperate to keep the power?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so what we did was we've urged thousands of people to call one or two congressmen. And I've got to tell you, all of a sudden the needle moved because they said, whoa, it's not the normal 200 or 300 calls, and we're getting thousands of people from all over the country. So could one strategy be, I could tell you, if everybody listening to this broadcast and listen to the shadow broadcast, if 5,000, 6,000, maybe more people just called during a week, one or two of your parliament members, and let them know that you're going to work hard to defeat them, you
Hmm.
think that'll have some effect?
I think it would. And I think the other thing I'd suggest is Canadians have to get more involved. This happened because we were asleep. We missed this. And this is where we own some of this, because when it comes to noticing the bills that are going through the House, if you're not interested in politics and you don't think it's affecting you, you're not liable to look at the website. But I would urge Canadians to go to parl.ca, and it's basically where all the parliament bills are. So there's petitions on there that haven't been signed. So if there's something about let's say, for example, that your member of parliament is a conservative and he's trying to push against this streaming legislation or something to that effect, he can put out a petition, and there's like 1,000 signatures on there. There should be 1 million signatures on there, and it's
Hmm.
free. You just go onto there. It's a fillable form. You fill it out. You put your address and your postal code so they know that where you're from. And I voted on, or I added my name to a couple of petitions that were on there. It's an easy thing to do, and I think we have to keep them accountable. They work for us. We got it. We can't lose sight of the fact that they work for us. And
David, do you think people are afraid to? I mean, like I said, this is foreign to us in America that these politicians are threatening people's jobs and pensions and freedom of speech. You think some people just want to, but they're afraid to?
it's possible, but at what point will you have had enough? I mean, you either stop it in its tracks, you stop it now, or it's going to get much worse. I mean, imagine Vladimir Putin. He said he took a shot at Trudeau just recently, in the last few days. He said he freezes the bank accounts of his opponents, and he's going to call me a dictator. So he says, by the way, our fuel is 57 cents a liter, where yours is almost $2 a liter. So he had something to say about it. And I mean, I think we have to get involved. We have to say, let's stop being fearful, and let's make them fearful. Let's say that now we're watching what they're doing, and we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to tolerate it.
You're right. I like what you just said, and we learned that the hard way here in the States. People used to fear them, like you say, the political people in power, until the people realized, well, you know what? And I believe it really began with the Reagan administration when Ronald Reagan stood up against the Soviet Communist Party and the elites of this country. And the one thing he did was astonishing. I mean, I lived during this time. Uh, the air traffic controllers in our country it was a union pretty much controlled by,
Yes.
the big wigs, the powerful elites, and may have had some influence their way with the Communist Party. Well, Reagan took them on. And here's what happened, folks. And I'm asking the Canadians to listen to this real carefully. Reagan threatened to fire them all, to fire all of our air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
Now, he was advised not to. His staff told him no. And up to the last minute, they were telling him, "Don't do this, Mr. President. You fired them all. We've got no one, right, to do our air traffic, especially our military air traffic." Well, Reagan, to his credit, he says, "You know what? I'm going to go out to the Rose Garden and I'll have a press conference." Well, they thought he was going to back off. He just went up there and says, "You're all fired in 48 hours." And he did. He fired all of them, thousands of them. But he had mechanisms in place to take care of air traffic. David, from that day on, that one federal union, like the air traffic controllers and others, including the post office, never again went on strike. Never.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm reading his book right now, and I find it quite funny because there was a question in there. I said, "Oh, are you going to fire the postal guys?" He says, "No, but I'm going to mail them their paychecks."
Yeah. He
had a million of them. He was
so now what's happening is so Reagan set the tone for grassroots stuff. So public opinion. Listen to this one, folks. The Democrats back then, no different than the Democrats today. They said that this would be the end of Ronald Reagan. But grassroots America stood up and said this was the beginning of Ronald Reagan. And it could be the beginning of any leader who stands up and with strength and with courage and has the backing of the people. And there's to your point, David. If a leader, look at Brian Peckford, all right, comes on the air, he could sit back and enjoy the rest of his life, but his passion for his country.
He's on fire. He's so good.
Yeah, on fire. And we published in our newsletter this week that went out, folks, his websites. I urge you to go to his websites, help the man, because you're helping yourself. And he's using a lot of his own money in order to secure the freedoms of people in Canada. But to your point, David, people need to get involved. And we're talking now in America here, and maybe you could weigh in on this with regard to Canada. We're talking on local levels with regard to school boards. We have elected school board members.
That's what I was going to just make.
We even have elected judges in some states.
Well, I was just going to make that point. In my old life in government, I worked with municipal affairs, of course, and we worked with assessments, property tax assessments, and that. So if you look at our tax bill, it's about 2/3 school tax. That's what it is on our property. Our school tax goes on our property tax. So those people get in by acclamation. There's nobody even runs for the school trustees. So school trustees they have a lot of power, and there's going to be an election. I think it's in this fall. So there'll be election of school division. They have a chance to get in and really do important work as far as the education that kids are getting. Stay away from the critical race theory and all of the things that they're pushing in the schools today. There's legislation coming in and they're pushing it down their throats in Ontario. So things that can be done is run for office. You need good people that are critical thinkers to go and fill these positions as school trustees. You need to be that's the board, the school board itself. And then there's going to be a municipal election in Manitoba this fall. So I urge people to get involved and be a reeve, a councillor, a mayor, fill those positions with people that are there for service. They're there for as a service to people, not for something that they can gain. And everybody can bring something to the table as far as that. If you have an interest in civics, I mean, that's the one thing they don't teach in school these days. Civics. The people don't even know about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I've been sharing with young people saying, these are your freedoms. These are, they're universal. Everybody has the same freedom.
Let's talk about that. That's important because in America, I could tell you that in speaking to a lot of young people, they don't know about our Constitution. They don't even know who some of the presidents were, like Abe Lincoln. And so this is on us now, all right? This is on parents and those of us who have lived long enough. Folks, I want you to think about something chilling. When we're gone, our generation's gone. The question is, who's going to teach the young people of the generation of our children about our countries and about our freedoms? There's no one left. So what we need to do is, like David said, is to get involved. on local government levels. We've had a situation in America here where school boards have been, total school boards have been defeated, and
Yeah.
conservatives who believe in the founding fathers' principles have been elected. Now, David, have you been following Governor DeSantis in Florida? What he's
Yes,
done?
of course.
Okay.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, he's an
Yeah.
American favorite, and
Yeah.
a tough guy, strong guy. We do have in our Constitution states' rights, and he's using every bit of that.
Mhm.
Kristi Noem in South
Yes.
Dakota, and Governor Abbott in Texas.
Abbott. Yes.
One thing I like what Abbott's doing, and I'm bringing this up because when you have the people behind you, you see, and they'll tell you right away, if they didn't have the people behind them, it would be difficult for them to do what they're doing. So for those of you in Canada who don't know what's happened, let's talk about Florida. The Governor DeSantis, with regard to illegal immigrants being shipped to his state by Joe Biden in the middle of the night, he is now gathering up the illegal immigrants and flying them, transporting them to Delaware, to Joe Biden's neighborhood where he
That's
lives.
hilarious.
That's where they're all going.
That's
Let Joe
hilarious.
Biden deal with it.
Yes.
Governor Abbott in Texas made this statement this week. He's doing the same thing. All the illegal immigrants in the middle of the night being sent to cities throughout Texas. They're going to be sent to Washington, D.C., and they're going to be dropped off at the Capitol building.
Right.
Kristi Noem made a speech the other day at the Reagan Foundation Library, and she talked about the principles of Ronald Reagan, the strength, the vigor, and the public support that he was able to garner.
Yes.
All three of these individuals, and many more, all right, many more in America who are standing up, have been able to capture what? The hearts, the souls, and the spirits of the American people. You have leaders in Canada. David, you're one of them. Brian Peckford's one of them. There are others. I know you probably know more than I do, even in your local communities. And David, I'm sure you have mayors and other people involved. But I think many of them are reluctant to stand up because they feel when they look to the left or to the right. You know, I get a kick out of people when I ran for office. I'm right behind you, Lieutenant, right behind you. Well, I turned behind me and I can't even find them. They're so far behind.
Way behind you.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and part of the problem that we have here as well is we have strictly representation by population. We don't have 2 senators per province. That would be a great thing. So what happens is the election's basically over by the time it gets to the Ontario-Manitoba border, because Ontario's population's so big. We have absolutely no say about what's going on in our government. So the Liberals are elected before we even come back from the polls. And that's the sad thing. Like, so we're a population of call it a million and I don't know, million, 1,000,003, and so they're all Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta is very similar in population. So there've been talk about separation. Maybe we can separate from the rest of Canada. There's been talk about how can you govern. Brian Peckford made a very good important point that I didn't realize, because I've been following politics for some time, but I didn't realize the power that the provinces have. He made a comparison to two governors in the U.S. And if you look at how Kristi Noem and basically DeSantis are, how they're taking the power, they're just taking the authority. They're making these decisions, and they're making good decisions. And if we had a strong leadership in our provinces, we could do the same thing. But right now it's reverse. All the power has gone to the feds, and the federal government's actually determining everything. Now, in our constitution, it says things like education is a provincial matter, but we're sort of lined up for their payout. We're sort of lined up and we're waiting for their money. So
We've heard that in America. Education is a federal government matter. No, it's the matter of parents and their children. That's where education's at.
Right, and it's not public schools. I want to make it clear, it's government schools. You have no choice of what's in unless you want to get involved in the school division. You have no idea what they're teaching the kids,
Right.
So the control is there. But it's sad that we don't have leadership in the provinces, because at one time there was a guy named Ralph Klein in Alberta. If he'd have been alive, there would never been anything like this going on in Alberta. So there was some strength at one point. There isn't anymore. We had Sterling Lyon way back in the day, and he was involved, actually worked on the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. He was the signator as well. But I mean, we had some strength, but we don't have any now. So right now we have a division. We have an NDP and a conservative government in Manitoba, but there's never been a liberal making government. So it just flips back and forth from NDP to conservative. There really is no, and they're not good government. and so what's happening, there's new parties starting up. There's the Keystone Party that's starting up in Manitoba. There's Maverick Party for Western Canada. So but that's just fracturing the right. So the problem is, it's kind of like people wanted to do with down in the states, where they wanted to start a new Republican Party, and said no. Donald Trump said no. The one we have is good. Like,
Right.
you just have to get rid of the rhinos. So we have the Mitt Romneys in our conservative
Yeah.
party, and
Well,
that's
well,
the
you're
unfortunate
right.
thing.
So David, to wrap things up, people are asking for an action plan. We did that. Campaign for America put together an action plan for Americans, and it was a plan step by step. We put it in a PDF form and sent it out to people that wanted it, uh, giving them some guidance on how to get committees together in their neighborhoods and to get involved politically. So I'll offer this up, okay, to the Canadian people. We've done it in America. It's worked well. We will come to your house. What do you think of that, folks? How can I possibly get to your house without a vaccine passport? Well, I could. And we did that here in America, and it worked. So if you're willing to have 2, 3, 4 people, I don't care, 5 people, 2 people in your home, we'll actually go to you. Dave, if I may volunteer you as our new director up there,
Sure. Okay.
we'll go to you via Zoom, okay, or some
Yeah.
social media platform, and we'll come into your home and speak to the residents and help you and guide you on how you can take positive action within the framework of the law, get people involved, get their spirit up, and do what? Let freedom ring. So, Dave, if you could be so kind to maybe set up an action plan that would
Sure.
be applicable to your
Sure.
country.
Sure.
We down here, we'll put it all together. I'll get you and Arnie Sherman together to talk about it. And why don't we do that? I think,
Sure.
I'm getting a lot of good feedback from people saying it's great to have all the knowledge. It's great to have all the education and truth, as you say,
Mhm.
that's out there. But now we need to do something about it. So how's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. And the other thing you have to remember, to give a bit of hope and encouragement, we do have the courts that are hearing one case with the Alberta Health Services, and they're questioning the health officer. And there's also one upcoming in BC. Now, it seems like a step forward, a step backwards, but there are upcoming hearings, and of course, Brian Peckford had talked about the one that they have filed, which is going to be a big one that'll be done throughout the year. But I think in the meantime, we have, as a group of Canadians that are interested in our freedoms, we have to support the alternative media. So there's Winnipeg Alternative Media, there's Rebel News, there's True North, there's Druthers. There's a few that are absolutely giving good information, and I think we have to support those. So sometimes we have to support them with the money, but I think we ought to get behind them, because the state media, the CBC, the CTV, they're all basically getting supported by government, and it's a propaganda machine.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave, we got a lot of invitations. We got a lot of invitations. You're welcome to my home and this. So here's
Okay.
what we're going to do. You see, it says campaignforamerica.com, folks. We're going to ask you to go to our website, and there's a contact page. Now, the reason why we're asking you to go that route, we discovered when you email us directly, it takes a big process to capture your email to get you back. So you go contact page and just put down in the narrative, says, we would like you to come to our home, something like that. And then I'm going to get all this information to Dave and your email, and Dave, you'd be able to communicate with them.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
But here's a requirement to get the lieutenant there. You see, folks, my wife knows that I love coffee. All right. So she decides to get me this. Look at this. Look at this, Dave. Look at the size of this thing.
Lots of
Right?
room for a mug of coffee. Yeah.
So of course, she decides to get me this coffee.
Frozen up. You've frozen up.
Hey, Dave, you there?
Yep, I'm here. We lost you for a bit. Kind of suspicious. Must be monitoring the feed.
Let me see where I am. I think I'm here somewhere. Uh, let's see. Yeah, we lost power. I told you we had this storm out here.
Right. We can
I
hear you.
can't- Yeah, but nobody could see me here. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I hope everyone could hear us. Why don't we do this, Dave? Why don't we sign off and you go back on real quick and
Sure.
let people know what happened so they don't panic, okay?
Okay, we'll do.
All right.
Yeah.
Send that. Send
do
me
the same link.
Same link. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
okay.
giving you time to sign off here. Thanks.
Okay.
And I see people are still on, I think. Let's stand by a minute, folks, and we're going to try to restore our power. We have a storm out here, and
Your camera's out.
yeah, my camera's out. Okay, so here's what we'll do, folks. We're going to. So if you could just bear with us, Dave, or sign off
Sure.
and come
Okay.
back on, and
Okay.
if you all could join us, we'll just have a little bit of an extended broadcast. I wish I could find a way.
Somebody's asking in the chat where I'm from. I'm from Manitoba, right in the center of Canada.
All right. Okay, we're going to sign off and then come right back on, folks. All right. So stand by. Now you'll have to sign off, folks, and come back on our new. I guess when we set this thing up. Okay, Dave, I'm going to sign off and then we'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're live again.
We're back.
I think we picked up right after we dropped off because, yeah, I think we're live again. Well, all right, let's wait a few minutes and some of our audience will come back. As I said, we have a storm out here and we just lost our power momentarily. It's funny, Dave, before when we were on, you were on my right.
Yes.
And I was on your left. I guess the storm shocked us.
Yeah, switch this around. Before I forget, I want to mention about the other alternative media. There's
Sure.
True North, Rebel News. There's the Counter Signal. There's Action for Canada. There's Druthers, and then there's the Winnipeg Alternative Media. They're all doing good work, and they have been for a number of months now. Well, years, I suppose.
Well, that's good news, and I think a lot of people don't know, and they're unaware of a lot of this. So, if we can do this, Dave, to wrap things up, I encourage people to certainly go to our website, campaignforamerica.com. Let us know that you would like us to join you in your home with a Zoom meeting to speak to many of the people that in Canada, I'm sure, who want to stand up and to be part of the solution. We certainly have all the information in the world that we need to address, and I think it's important that we do that. So how's that sound, Dave?
That sounds great. Sounds exciting.
Yeah, it sure is. So, all right. So that's about it, folks. Now we're going to, we're starting to get emails. That's good to our website. So I apologize. I said we do have a storm here in the Northeast. And it's funny because I told Dave that during the course of our broadcast, there's a lot of water, folks, around us in our studio. The last storm we had, it was flooded. So I told Dave that if I'm speaking to him and this starts to happen and I go like this, Dave, just take the show over because we're sinking.
Okay.
Okay. All
Will
right.
do.
Any last minutes, Dave? Any last words to your country?
No, I think just be encouraged. We just got to keep working within the framework of the law. We just got to keep working hard to keep our liberty and our freedom.
Amen to that. And folks, it looks like we're going to have Pastor Arthur on. Dave and I have talked to
Yes.
him, I think on April 21st. We'll talk more about that. Easter week, we're not going to have any broadcasts in honor of that Holy Week. But after that, we'll be back on the air. And I'll be popping in from time to time. So, yep, Dave, if you could work on that action plan, we'll get that going and start speaking to the Canadians right in their home.
Okay, I'm all over it. Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks a
Nice
lot,
talking to
folks. Thank you for joining us, David. Thank you. You're a good patriot, and I look forward to seeing you and talking to you again. Thank you.
Talk to you again. Good night.
Good night. All right, folks. So that's it. So now that the program got interrupted by the weather, that would probably drill John Kerry here in America, who believes that the weather is a national security threat to America. I want to thank you all for joining us. And, I'll give you one more laugh, folks. One more laugh. In fact, maybe, I'll tell you now. The United States Department of Defense, all right? And I was sharing with David before airtime that maybe I'll talk about this because we need to lighten things up. The United States Department of Defense released today an investigation that was conducted in 2010, kind of admitting that there was encounters between the U.S. military and UFOs. This is a fact, folks. It's actually in the news. All right. They kind of admitted that and talked about radiation exposure, et cetera, et cetera. So I was thinking that the Democrats in this country, once they really get a hold of that, I'm sure there'll be some sort of law that they're going to pass requiring any aliens from space to show their vaccine passport before they land on any piece of real estate in America. And so we had a good laugh over that because the fact is, you know what? These Democrats here are crazy enough to think about that. So hope you got a good laugh at that, folks. And thank you so much for joining us. Remember, let's have a good laugh. Let's start laughing more. Let's start speaking more. Let's not fear these people. They need to fear us, and they need to fear the one who they are ultimately answerable to. And we know that that's God Almighty. Thank you all. CampaignForAmerica.com. Americans, Canadians, anyone around the world, contact us through that website. And I don't care what country you live in, we'll come. All right. We'll come via the internet, via Zoom, via Facebook, whatever it takes. We'll come and speak to the citizens in your community about how you can get involved, make a difference, and let freedom ring. God bless you all. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening. I'm Lieutenant Rogers.